Good morning, and indeed, good afternoon, everyone, for those of you joining us from across Canada and across Europe. My name is Kathy Murphy. I'm your host today. I am the Vice President of UCAN, our European Union Chamber of Commerce in Canada. You are all very welcome to this, our third session in our new Access to Market webinar series. These webinars are meant to deliver practical information on how to do business in Canada and the EU under CETA. And today's topic is exporting to the EU and importing from the EU. The webinar is organized in collaboration with the Directorate General for Trade of the European Commission, and this session will touch upon the following components: understanding the import-export process for goods and services, looking up information product by product, understanding how to claim your duty discount, getting information if you're facing market access issues, and a live demonstration of the tools by our experts. So a few practical considerations. We do invite all of our participants today to pose questions for our experts. You may do so using the Q&A tool, which is at the bottom of your screen. So please go ahead throughout the webinar and populate that with your questions. And when our presentations are complete, we will indeed turn to your questions for the final 15 minutes of this session. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Saul Golding and his colleagues working at the DG Trade European Commission, who are responsible for EU policy on trade with countries outside the EU. Saul will be our guest speaker along with his colleagues from DG Trade. So Saul, welcome.
Thank you, Kathy, for the very nice introduction. I'd like to introduce myself as well. So my name is Saul Golding. I am here alongside Thibaut Bodson, Jakob Konides, and our other colleague, Laurence van Litzen, who will be here to present our Access to Markets tool to you in the hopes to make it a bit more clearer how you may utilize the tools that we have made available. And I'll do that through a short slides overview and a very quick live presentation of our tool, our platform, and how you can utilize the My Trade Assistant for goods and ROSA in order to get a product from the EU to Canada, and vice versa. So that would be what I will do, and maybe a bit of background on the portal itself. We have launched our portal in 2020, late 2020, and since then we have actually have had over 4.5 million users. Since the launch, we are very focused on giving our users the access to the information they need to best internationalize through information made available on tariff, taxes, import formalities, procedures, and all aspects. But just that I just wanted to share the screen, but I don't seem to be able to at the moment. So maybe I'll just wait until that's quickly fixed. But yeah, we've made this tool available in the last 2 years. We're coming up on our 3rd anniversary this year, and the reception has been very, very good. And we continue to spread awareness through outreach to very important groups, stakeholders, and all concerned parties. And we've done that through, for example, webinars like this, for which we found to be quite useful. So I will just quickly show you directly here a few slides on what you will be able to find should you use the portal. So what does it inform you on? It gives you an overview on our EU market. So as you know, there are a number of member states, and for which you will be able to, and you'll see how to do that, individually choose the member state for which you are concerned. And you will even see the information down to the VAT rate on the imported products that will be applicable. You'll even see the name and address for the standardization offices, should you need anything on standardization, and to that level of detail you'll find. But on a general scheme, what do we have? We have tariffs, internal taxes, as I said, rules of origin, the procedures that you must go through in customs in order to get your products there, the requirements that are set, the also trade barriers and the statistics that are available on the trade. Barriers are interesting because we also have a facility, which I'll just quickly show you, that enables you to look at what barriers there are in terms of market access, and how to, we also have a facility in which you can launch if should you have a complaint on market access, on trade and sustainable development, or on generalized scheme of preferences as well. So that'll all be quite clear throughout the end. I will not show these because our colleague will show you that. As I say, the facility for such an aspect of inputting a complaint is called the single entry point. And as I mentioned, both Access2Markets and single entry point have been actually launched in 2020, and we are under the remit of our Chief Trade Enforcement Officer, Denis Radonnet. And through all of that, we have actually facilitated the development of both an information tool as well as a tool in which you can use as a first point of contact for any potential barriers you may be facing. And I will show you quickly how to use such a tool. Our colleague Thibault will explain our trade assistant for services and investments. And our colleague Jakob will introduce the procurement tool. And just a bit the information we have here, we have a contact form which are freely available to use and contact us through. We are also online. And without further ado, we can go to the welcome page. So basically, when you when you look at the web page, you get quite a lot of information. We have made it available in different EU languages. And we have here our My Trade Assistant for Goods and Rosa, which is what I will show you. We also have our services, procurement, and we have implemented a new tool since the Russian aggression of Ukraine, which gives an overview of export tariffs, prohibitions, restrictions that Russia and Belarus have actually implemented. So you can search here by product name or HS code. Through the data will bring you an idea of what will be affecting your product by Belarus or by Russia. We also have a bit on the overview of our trade agreements. You can actually look through our different agreements here on our trade website, where you get a big an in-depth look at the different ones that we have. So EU Canada, of course, would be of interest. We also have a bit the overview on our market itself. You can look through all of these different, I invite you to have a look through all of these in the future. But the most important, what we really would like to hone in on, is our very powerful tool that allows you to search by product name or HS code. And just in the interest of time, I've actually already pre-filled this. But for example, I was able to type a HS code here. But if you don't know the HS code, for example, you can also type the actual name of the product. And what's important to do is note that you can choose any of the countries here. And for this, I chose France, but you are free to choose anything. So look, we'll say for Denmark here, to Canada. This also works on the reverse. And what you do is you search, and it will load normally. And you can see that your product comes up directly. So as I say, it's not necessary that you need to know the HS code. You can actually, if you are also not very certain, you can actually look through the entire of the HS tree. And that gives you a bit the scope and idea of the depth of information that is there. So say you are looking at exporting from Denmark your rye flour, you can look at what the general duty rate would have been. But because of our CETA, we have a 0% rate on tariffs. So that's number one. You can also go into a bit more detail here of what tariffs for under the 1102 code are, here on the different levels of flour, etc., etc. It shows you a bit the scope of how much actual data is actually there as well. As I mentioned earlier, we give a bit the idea on what taxes will be, for example, applicable. And in Canada, of course, there's levels of, there's provinces, which are different, which implement different levels of tax, GST. So that's a very interesting idea for a European business who's looking into Canada to see what might be affected in, how their product might be affected if in British Columbia, for example, as opposed to New Brunswick. And the same is on the reverse. So if I do Canada to Denmark and look in taxes, you will also see that we have our Danish VAT rate of 25%. And if I was to choose Ireland or France or Bulgaria, all of these will be populated there on the individual member state level. So you see a bit how it works. We also have the specific and the general import requirements. This time it goes from Canada to Denmark, for example. This goes to the level of even giving you an overview of which customs value declarations you may need. It gives you examples of the single administrative documents you will need, always with a reference to the regulation. And even when it comes to the specific, this actually goes to HS level. So if I choose a different product, the specific requirements for that product will also be listed here on the left. So here of course, I'm looking at a foodstuff. So I'm looking at the different requirements I would need in order to get my Canadian rye flour to Denmark, and how I would need to look at the labeling requirements specific to Denmark for that. Again, if I was to choose Canada to Spain or from Spain to Canada, that there will be differences and a lot more detail will come in for that. Just as a very quick last moment before I introduce Thibaut so he can go to the that I introduce, if Laurence is here, she can take over for Rosa already. She is not, perfect. So we can go, maybe Thibaut, you can join next, who will give an overview of the services. But before I do that, we also have our single entry point, which some of you may be aware of. It's how to launch a complaint, and it's the first point of contact in our Directorate General. You do that through the contact page here. So if you need any more information we can follow up in the questions and answers, or you can also look in the contact us for section of the website. So what you can do is, should you have any questions in the following moments, in the following weeks and months, you can submit them through here, and the concerned colleague will be able to deal with the question at hand. And then maybe the very last moment, we also have our events page where we have training similar to this, where we actually go into it in a 2-hour session. So maybe that might be something of interest. I would just reiterate the value of our virtual sessions like this. But yeah, I remain available, and I'd like to just throw the microphone towards Thibaut, so maybe he can join. I will
Indeed.
stop sharing in time.
Thanks a lot, Saul, and hello to all participants. I'll also share my screen. I think that if you have some visual, it will be easier for you to follow the presentation. I would like to introduce my trade assistant for service and investment. And what I'd like to do with you today is basically two things. First, to briefly present the objective and the scope and the coverage of this tool. That's the first thing. And then the second thing will be a brief demo. So I'll show you how to use it and how we can indeed have results when it comes to specific information that service suppliers may want to have when they will export their service to third countries. So the first point on the objective pursued by my trade assistant for service investment. Well, it's very much the sibling platform of my trade assistant for goods, but the focus is obviously on service and investment. So basically, it should help operators, stakeholders, businesses, business organizations, chambers of commerce, and so on, to have concrete, practical information on the conditions, on the legal requirements that service suppliers, say a law firm, have to fulfill when they want to export services to third countries. So again, the objective is very much to help them having a better understanding of the conditions that they will have to fulfill when they want to export their service. That's on the objective. Now on the coverage, on the scope, one has to know that for the time being, the coverage of my trade assistant for service and investment is rather limited. What do I mean here? I mean that we can find information for three different types of service sectors, namely legal services, maritime transport services, and accounting services. So three service sectors for two countries, and those two countries are the UK on the one hand and Canada. However, it's also important to stress the fact that the platform, my trade assistant for service investment, will be massively expanded over the course of this year, so that by the end of the year, operators should be able to find information when it comes to the supply of more than 100 different service sectors. So here you will have information on professional services, engineering services, legal services, as I said, architectural services. You will also find information on construction services, on environmental services, and you name it. So you will see that the service sector coverage will be extremely important, and you will find this information for 4 different countries: for Canada, the UK, Switzerland, and Japan. That's for the objective, the coverage that we would like to achieve for this year. And in the coming years, we'll add more countries to that, and we'll try to include indeed countries such as the United States, as China, and so on and so forth. That's very much when it comes to the objective and the coverage of my trade assistant for service investment. Now, I'm happy to very concretely and practically show you how to use this tool. So say that you are indeed a service supplier and that you'd like to expand your activity to a third country. And you don't know what specific legal requirements, what specific conditions you have to fulfill in order indeed to export your services. Then you connect to the Access2Market platform, and then you will have here to select, to click on service and investment. And here you reach the search bar of my trade assistant for service and investment. The different fields that you have to fulfill are relatively straightforward and logical. So you'll have to select the service that you want to export. Let's say here that you want to export legal service. So you're a law firm based, say, in Paris or in Brussels, and you want to export. You want to do that to Canada. And as Saul already explained, well, Canada has several provinces and territories. Then you will have to target to select the jurisdiction to which you want to export. And here we can select Ontario. So it's very straightforward. You have to fill these 3 different fields, and then you can click on search. Oops. here you have to, that's something that is specific to legal services, you have to select the specific practice that you want to do and say that you want to provide legal advice on foreign and public international law. So you click that, you select, and there you are. You have the results and the information on the different market access condition, on the different legal requirements that you as a law firm, that's an example, will have to fulfill if you want to export to let's say, Ottawa. The next step for you, and that's something that is specific to service supplier, is that you will have to select your mode of supply. What does it mean? Well, basically, it means that you have to decide, okay, through which way, which mode do you want to export your services? You want to do that cross-border, or you want to do that through a commercial presence, or you want to do that through movement of professionals. So movement of professional, it's basically when one of your employees, when a professional, when a lawyer will travel to Canada in order to supply the service there in Canada. That's movement of professional. Is that the way you want to provide a service? Or perhaps you want to do that through commercial presence. Commercial presence is when you want to have, say, a branch in Canada, and you will supply the service in Canada through that branch. That's the second option. Or the third one is via cross-border supply of service. What is that exactly? Well, it's when you stay in your country, so you are in Brussels and you stay in Brussels, but your client is based in Canada, in Ottawa, for instance, and the client will also stay there, and you will provide a service via phone or via email or any kind of other technology. So that's what you will have to select. Say in this case that you want to do that cross-border. Well, you have here the results, meaning the different conditions that your company will have to fulfill if it wants to export legal service to Canada. And you will see very practically here, I clicked on all market access conditions. So it basically lists all different conditions that you will have to fulfill. You will have to fulfill conditions linked to data transfer restriction and so on and so forth. You will also have to fulfill conditions related to licensing and authorization requirements. For instance, it says that lawyers licensed outside of Canada need to apply to the Law Society of Ontario for a permit and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of very practical information that you will be able to find. If you scroll down, you will see also that you will have, by clicking here on the arrow, more information with respect to the legal basis from which the specific information has been extracted, the source, as well as the regulatory authority in charge of the provision of legal service in Ontario, and the contact details. So that's in a nutshell how you can use My Trade Assistant for service and investment. Perhaps a couple of takeaways from my side. The first one is that indeed the scope, the coverage of My Trade Assistant for service investment will expand massively throughout the year. So I very much invite you to consult this tool several times over the year to see whether the services which your company might be supplying is already included or not on the tool. That's the first takeaway. And then the second one is that the search for information is relatively straightforward, user-friendly. So you have to include service, country, and jurisdiction, and then to navigate on this basis. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any question that you may have towards the end of this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Thibault. Maybe if Laurence will jump in now, just to give a short overview on Rosa.
Yes. Thank you. Do you see my screen? Do you hear me?
We hear you very well.
Okay. So
can we see your screen as well?
And you see my screen, marvelous. So Rosa, it's a self-assessment tool. So you this tool will allow you to, in fact, check if your product that you want to export to the other party is originating and therefore benefit from the preference under the agreement.
Laurent, sorry
yes.
to interrupt you. We only see your home screen. We don't see the Rosa screen.
Sorry, I will do like this. So now you will see, I suppose, a good one.
Bon,
you see?
Wait so much. Wait, exactly. Yes.
Okay,
yes,
voilà. So here I have take an example. For example, a cheese that I want to export from Belgium to Canada. So first you have the tariff, and I suppose that you explained this part. And then you go to the entry on the left and you will see rule of origin and rule of origin self-assessment. You click there and you arrive to this page where in fact you have an old template and a new template. In the short term, you will have only this improved version. So you go this improved version. And then you have just to answer to different questions and the tool will tell you if your product is originating or not. So I will start with a very simple example, cheese, and you will see that with a few clicks, the machine will tell you whether or not your product is originating. So first it explains that indeed your product has to be originating to benefit from preference. And then you have a first question. It's the origin criteria. What kind of origin criteria is fulfill your product? And then you have a first question is if my product is wholly obtained, and the tool tells you that it's concerned agricultural product, fish, mineral, and waste and scrap, and the product obtained from those products. So yes, cheese, it's probably an agri product. So I can go there because I'm not sure. I go and I have explanation of what it means exactly. So in this case, the machine tells you that indeed, if your product is listed in the Article 4, then it's a wholly obtained product, and I can check, I can go there, and indeed, it's okay. It's in fact a cheese product, so it's a product obtained from live animals there. So indeed the milk was obtained from the live animal, and I made the cheese out of this milk, and I didn't import any product. So yes, my product fulfills the rule. So I can click OK. It's a wholly obtained product. I go next. You have another question. The machine asks you whether the production process that confers the origin took place in the territory of the party. Yes, it was done in the EU, no problem. So I reply yes. And based already on this answer, the machine tells you that based on your answer, your product is originating. So you see that in 2 clicks, I can assess if my product is originating, and I don't need to learn about and follow thousands of hours of training about rule of origin. I know already that the product is originating. Then you continue, and the machine go further and will explain what kind of document you need to provide. And then you have to, again, reply to some question. Is the value of your consignment above 6,000 euro or less than 6,000 euro? And the machine tells you that if it's above 6,000 euro, take care, because you can do a self-assessment, but a self-declaration, but you need to be registered. So, but okay, I can click here. I say yes, the value of my consignment is above 6,000, so I am under this condition. You have a last question about the transport, but perhaps you don't know exactly how your good was transported because you are a producer based in the EU, so you have no clue. It's a trader who will export your product, so you don't know. You fulfill, and then you have, in fact, the self-assessment, where the machine tells you indeed your product is originating, so you can benefit. As you have said that your consignment is above 6,000, you have to be registered to be able to do what we call an origin declaration. And as producer or exporter, you need to do an origin declaration. Again, it's look very complicated, so you click, and the machine will explain you how you have to do this origin declaration. It reminds you that you have to be registered because your consignment was above 6,000. It was already explained before, but we repeat. And we explain here how the origin declaration has to be done. That you have to fulfill, on which kind of document you have to put this statement, how you have to do it, how you have to fulfill it, with all the footnote, and you can read to be able to correctly write to make out the origin declaration. You have also information about the validity of this origin declaration and how long the relevant document needs to be kept. So you have really all the information that you need, and always also if you want to see the legal text that explains this, you can always click there and you will find the relevant article. So we have tried really to gather in one place all the necessary information, all the information that you need to be able to check if your product is originating, and also the machine explain you what kind of document you need to provide, because as you may know, in fact, in each agreement, the documents are a little bit different. So here it's very specific to Canada. Another perhaps useful information when you export to Canada is normally you have to be registered. You don't know exactly what it is. And again, you click and you have an explanation of how the exporter have to be registered. And you can even find the portal where you can get a number, a REX number, what we call a REX number, etc. So if you go through, if you read this, you have all information to know how to be registered. So I don't know if I have, again, 2 minutes, because I saw you an example of a product which is wholly obtained. So it's perhaps it's a very simple scenario, but I can take an example, and I don't know if you want, of another product which is perhaps a little bit more complex, where the rules are a little bit more complex, and usually you use what we call non-originating material to produce this product. So you have imported product from third party to produce your product. And I have here taken an example of a product in 28, which is, I do believe, a chemical product. So again, here I took the other way around. So I want to export this product from Canada to Netherlands, for example. Again, I go to the entry rule of origin, my self-assessment tool, and again, I start again to assess if my product is originating. I start. So here, to the first question, my product is obviously not wholly obtained because I have imported product. So in fact, I am in the third category. My product is produced using any non-originating material. So again, if you don't really understand what means non-originating, you have a mouse there and it explains you that it's really all non-originating material means parts, component, ingredients that do not qualify as originating under a EU preferential trade agreement. So which include the product import from outside the free trade area, or it's also a material that you use that is coming perhaps from Canada, but whose origin is unknown. So you have to consider all this product as non-originating. I am in this scenario. I go next. And here you see that, in fact, for this product, you have what we call alternative rule, meaning that you can, in fact, your product has to fulfill one of the rules. In the chemical product, on the top, we have not only what we call a change of classification rule, but we have also what we call a processing rule. And this is written in the note that if the product, en fait, if one of the processing that are detailed here has been done to produce your product is also originating. But let's imagine that you don't want to apply one of these processing rule, but on this rule, you don't understand it very well. You don't know what is a change from any other subheading means. So you can always go to rule explanation, and the machine will further explain. So continue reading, sorry. And then you will see that, voila, a product complies with the rule when all of the non-originating material used in its production are classified in a different HS subheading than the product. Again, you don't really understand. It's a little bit complicated, jargon, subheading, heading. You are not sure what it means. No problem. You have an example, a concrete example where you can better understand how to apply this rule. The machine tells you also how to consider some element when you assess if your product is originating. And this is related to all the factor of production that I use. I have to take them into account or not? What about the packing for retail, packing for shipment, etc. It's explained there if you have to consider them or not. So let's imagine that despite the fact that there is alternative rule, still my product do not comply with one of the product specific rule. And then I go to what we call flexibility. In fact, in each agreement, you have to check if your product comply with what we call the product specific rule, but some flexibility exists also to comply with this product specific rule. So, and perhaps I will be short because I see that time is passing, but there is what we call absorption principle, which is perhaps more relevant in the sector of machineries, less in the chemical. I will not explain. Anyway, you always click and you will get a full explanation of what it means. So perhaps here, there is also the principle of tolerance. So it's in fact, the tolerance allow you to use a limited quantity of non-originating material that are normally prohibited by the product specific rule. So I don't know exactly what it means. Again, I click there and you have the explanation that what are the value of the tolerance allowed under the EU-Canada Comprehensive Agreement, and also explanation how to apply this tolerance. So again, you have all the relevant information. And for example, you can say that, oh, okay, finally, indeed, I can apply the tolerance. I use non-originating material that are within the limit of the tolerance. So yes, I can use the tolerance, but okay, cannot use absorption. You have also what we call bilateral cumulation. So all products originating in the free trade country partner can be considered as it was done in your own country. So basically, if you are Canada, all the products produced in the EU that are originating, you can count them as if they were Canadian origin. This bilateral cumulation. You have also the full cumulation, which it's about the process. If some process have been done in the EU, you can count them as it was done in Canada. And again, there is a specific flexibility for sets. But imagine that here you have only you can only use the tolerance. So you say no for the rest. And then now the machine tell you that, okay, based on your answer, it seems that you may use one of the flexibility that you have mentioned to fulfill the PSR. And now you have to tell that which rule you can fulfill. For example, now take into account the tolerance, I can fulfill this rule, this change from any other subheading rule. I click here. You have again always to answer to this additional requirement, which is that you have the processing that confer origin take place in the territory of the party. You can say yes, it was done in all the processing was done in Canada. The processing that confer origin was done in Canada. And it's another additional requirement. You always need to check that what you have done go beyond minimal operation. Minimal operation, it's operations such as simple package, etc., packing operation, etc. You go there, and again, you will see all the listing of the minimal operation, but you have always to check that you are sure that you go beyond minimal operation. For the sake of time, I will say yes. You have here additional elements which are important for trader regarding what we call duty drawback, if you are allowed or not of refunding of the duty that you have previously paid on imported material, and on accounting segregation. But it's you are not obliged to answer. It's relevant information, but it's not necessary to assess if your product is originating. And now, okay, so I explained that it's a complex case because you import non-originating material, your product didn't meet the product specific rule, so you have to check if through the flexibility you were not allowed to still fulfill the product specific rule, so you were there. You answer to the additional requirement, territoriality, and if you went beyond the minimal operation. And now the machine told you that based on your answer, your product is originating in Canada. Again, you have the same question. Now you are an exporter located in Canada. So indeed, the machine is, you have to check with Canada what are the conditions for you to make the origin declaration. In the EU, if you are an exporter from the EU, you need to be registered. We just discussed that in the past, but in Canada, the conditions are a little bit different. And there you need to check what are the conditions to be able to be allowed to do an origin declaration. But anyway, the origin declaration, you have the fish, you have the explanation how to fulfill them. So indeed, for the EU exporter, you need to be registered. For a Canadian exporter, you need to check with the custom authority. Voilà. You have again the question on transport. Perhaps you don't know. And again, the self-assessment who recap a little bit all the answers that your product, based on this answer, your product is originating. Again, it explains that given that you are not located in the EU, you need to check the procedure for making an origin declaration with your local custom authority. But you have the information, you have the, if you click there, you have all the information to make out the origin declaration. And the machine tells you that, okay, on the transport, you don't know, but there is specific transport condition in the agreement between EU and Canada. The last element is that this tool is not binding, so it's based indeed of your answer, so it's not a legally binding instrument. And if you want really to know and to be sure that your product is originating, when you are exporting from the Canada to the EU, you can always request the National Custom Authority for a binding origin information. Voilà, I hope that I have convinced you that now to check if your product is originating and can benefit from preference under the Canada-EU agreement, you are convinced that with this tool, it's a jeu d'enfant, but I'm happy to answer to any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Laurence, because we'll quickly jump to Jakob, and then I believe that Kathy and the team have a Q&A session planned out for us. So perhaps Jakob, if you want to just jump on, just to quickly give an overview of the procurement tool, and then we can slide into the Q&A session. Thank you, Laurence, again. It was very, very interesting.
So, hello, this is Jakob Kornides. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Is this the case? Yes, okay. So I am giving you a short demonstration of another volley of Access to Market, which is called Access to Procurement. You find it here on this third page, and just to explain a little bit the purpose of this tool at this time is limited to helping European companies, European suppliers, to find out whether they are entitled to bid on a public procurement going on abroad in another country on an equal footing with local suppliers. So whether, for example, under the CETA agreement, they can bid on Canadian procurements on an equal footing with local Canadian suppliers. This is a very ambitious project, and in fact, Canada was the first of all our trading partners for whom and with whom we have implemented it. The second, as you can see here, is Japan, and these are so far the only countries for which this tool is available, but others will be added soon, and I am in the happy position to announce you that the next country to be added still in the course of this semester should be the United States, which of course would also add considerable importance to this part of Access to Market. Anyway, I suppose I'm speaking to an audience in Canada or that has interest in Canada, and so it is really good that Canada was the first country that we have integrated into this tool. As you can see here, and I suppose it's similar to what you have already seen on ROSA and on services, the presentation is very simple and the process is also very simple. You have a little voyage to make. It's indicated in this upper bar. You travel from left to right and you go step by step. In the area of procurement, the question of whether you have access to Canadian procurement under CETA and or the WTO government procurement agreement is decided essentially on the basis of three determinants. The first one is the procuring entity, because not all Canadian government entities are covered by those agreements. The second is the subject matter of the intended procurement, goods, services, because not everything that could be bought and supplied is covered. And thirdly, there are also value thresholds, because generally one doesn't cover small value procurements in international agreements, but only procurement above certain value thresholds, and these may vary according to the subject matter and the procuring entities. So let us go into medias res and demonstrate this. Among the two available countries, I'm now selecting Canada, and when I've arrived there, I have to identify the entity. Now, there are various ways of finding the entity, because the whole system is built on the idea that you know which entity it is, whose procurement you are looking at. Suppose you have visited the purchasing website of the Canadian government. It's called Canada Buys, and there you have found information on a procurement, and you're wondering, is this open to European bidders? So you say, okay, my procuring entity is, say, located in Manitoba, and let's suppose it is providing, it's an electric utilities that provides electricity to the large public. And then you click on this and you have the Manitoba Electric Board. There's of course also another way of arriving there, and that would be if you, well, you can use those search helps separately and independently, but you could also type in part of the name and search, and this gives you a list of relevant entities. And here again, okay, I have got 114 entities. So I maybe narrow it down again by electric utilities just to find it again. Here it is, the Manitoba Hydroelectric Board, and so I have identified my procuring entity. Next question, what are these guys buying? So there is a very basic selection, either goods or services or construction services. Often this alone already suffices, but yeah, okay, I also have to indicate the value. So let's say and data that what they are asking for has this value, and I click on this answer on this information, and already I get an assessment, in this case a negative one. Based on the information provided, it appears that there is no obligation for the procuring entity to consider bids from EU companies. The system refers you directly to the relevant provision of the CETA agreement so that you can find out why there is no obligation for Manitoba Electric Board. So I can click here and have a look. And it was note 3 of Annex 19.6. So what does it say? It says this chapter does not include...
Sorry to interrupt you, Jakob. Somebody has their microphone on. We'd be very grateful if you could mute. We've got some background noise. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I continue?
Yes, please do.
Okay, here you have the note which explains why that procurement is not covered. Construction services are not covered if they are awarded by entities that are active in, well, essentially that's provision of public services. So that's the explanation. Okay, I can go a step back and say, okay, it was not construction services. I was wrong. It was services. And, well, again, bad luck. No obligation for Manitoba Electric Board to buy my stuff, my services. Why is that? I look again. This time it's note 6 in the same annex. Wait a moment. Note 6 to Annex 19.5. What does it say? You scroll down and it says, oh, it's specific to Manitoba Hydroelectric Board. If they procure services, it's not covered. Bad luck. But in fact, maybe I made a little mistake. It was not services that that they wanted to buy. I must have misread the tender notice, or maybe I have misclicked here on this page, but this time I got it right. They are buying goods. So next step, and here you see that, well, what happens here is that I get a follow-up question. There can be all kinds of follow-up questions in the system, and this relates to the fact that there are many special provisions and exceptions and exemptions in the CETA agreement. It's rather complicated, and so we had to transform those provisions into follow-up questions that need to be answered. Is a tender for one of the goods listed below? I say yes. And too bad. Again, a negative answer. This time, for the sake of time, I'm not going to show you the annex where it says this. But let me just correct me once again and say, in fact, no, it's for a different good. I get another follow-up question. Does this tender relate to the purchase of water, energy, or fuels for the production of energy? I say no. Does the tender relate to activities outside Canada? I say no. Does it relate to the acquisition of goods and services for the purpose of exploitation of a geographical area for the purpose of exploring for or extracting oil, gas, coal, or other solid fuels? Again, I say no. Has it to do with shipbuilding? No. And here at the end, congratulations, I get a positive assessment. The system tells me that on the basis of the CETA agreement, it appears that I am eligible to bid on an equal footing with domestic Canadian suppliers. So you see how this works. It's, I mean, if you're interested in skiing races, as I think many Canadians are, it's like a slalom. You have to go through all the gates, and if you miss a gate, you are out of the race. Here, finally, I passed all the gates successfully. And this is why at the end, I get a positive assessment. I have deliberately chosen an example where I get a huge number of different follow-up questions. Normally, it's not that long. I can therefore already nearly end my presentation. Just to mention at the end that at the end of each assessment, you see here also a list of the relevant legal texts. So this is, in fact, the relevant provision, the relevant chapter of the CETA agreement, plus the 3 annexes that come into play. And then we have also references to 2 guidance documents, all of which may be helpful to further examine the course. Okay, I see it's already 6 o'clock. In my own interest, I'm ending here because I also need to catch a train very soon. There's still a little time left for questions and answers if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We have some background noise somewhere. I'm not sure where it's coming from, so just ask all of our presenters to turn off their mics. Stamatia, who is our IT person, if you could join us. It looks like some people were having trouble with the link. At this point, we have just one question. It says, good morning. Thank you for your presentation and introducing this tool to us. We are food importers and import some canned pork liver pates from Croatia and Romania. Countries such as Germany, Italy, and Hungary are generally allowed to export poultry products to Canada, as well as non-canned pork and poultry such as salamis and ham, where other EU members like Croatia are only allowed canned and containing pork only. Any idea why this is, and any advice on how to help bring Croatia, for example, on an equal footing so that we can import poultry products from our partners, at least the canned ones? Saul, I don't know who would be best positioned to answer that.
Well, I mean, what I think would be best, so thank you for the question number 1, actually, before I start. I think this is a very interesting question, but I would think that we would be better placed in taking this question in written form. And why I say that is that there are a number of aspects of the question that may not align directly with our competencies in trade. So I think it might be best that we could even filter this out to have a look at those and colleagues here that deal with the SPS issues and maybe see if they could shed some light on that for you. But best if we had that in a writing form and we could get back to you or to the colleague directly.
That's perfect. If you would like to email, you can. We'd be very happy to take your question to our experts and also to share it with the panelists today. We do have a thank you from someone in the Q&A, just saying it was very, very useful. As these are only 2 questions and we do have another moment, I might ask any one of you, if this was my first time using the ROSA system, what do you think is the pothole that I'm most likely to fall into as I navigate? Obviously, every step is critical, but is there one step in particular that you are seeing new users constantly being stymied by?
Maybe I'll jump in just as a quick overview, and if Thibault, Laurence, or Jakob want to. But Kathy, it's a very good point. And you know, we've, as I had mentioned at the start, we've in the past since the past 2 years, let's say, almost 3 years, been running this platform. We've reached over 4 million users, and we have done over 30 training events in 2022. So there's a vast amount of feedback that we do get, but I think probably the most let's say trap that people fall in, or however you want to, probably is that without such a training, without such an overview, it might be a bit difficult, it might be a bit kind of abrasive to see such a wealth of information. So we can really understand. This is why we would really always offer guidance. We have our contact form. We have the training facilities that are there. We have some videos online too. And I think that's probably the best way to avoid falling into such traps, because there are such resources available for you.
Perfect. Thank you. We actually, it is 12, but we'll go one more minute if you don't mind, because we do have another question, and it's a good one. So thank you for the webinar, most useful. The person in question says, I have a startup in the EU. Okay, this person has a couple of questions. One, in the Access2Markets assistant, how do I search the code for a certain product? For example, what is the HS code for jewelry? That might be more specific than we can get into here. Where can we consult the HS code? That's a good one. And also, to export jewelry from the EU, oh, they're saying to the US. This is an EU-Canada webinar, so we might skip that. Let's start with the first question, which is, where can we consult the HS code?
Okay, so perhaps I will just quickly share. Please let me know when you see. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Yep.
Cool. Super. So the user was interested in jewelry, right? Yes. So best that they sorry that I don't know how to spell it. But best that they use the, as I had shown, the product search facility rather than the HS code facility. Considering they don't know it, you will be able to look from, I believe from, I don't see the question anymore, Kathy, sorry. I just need to know the country it comes from, the EU.
I believe it's US. There's somebody.
Please, I have a startup in the EU. I have several questions. Yeah, to them, how do I search for code? From the EU to the US, right? Okay, yeah, so what we will do, regardless, we will do any EU member state. Again, Denmark, and we will, for the example of the purpose of our training is with under CISA, so we will choose Canada, and hopefully they will be able. This will populate the HS code for jewelry. Voila. So individually, I mean, the case by case for this user, we would need to know a bit more, and they would also need to consult. I'm just showing them how here, but they can consult directly. The best fit for their HS code or for their product here. Like, I mean, you see the level it goes to, and maybe they would be able to define here which HS code suits them best. Say, for argument's sake, it's this one, and they would be able to then see. Oh my gosh, sorry, one moment. You will be able to see all of the preferential rates, the tariff taxes, etc., as what I have seen. So to kind of answer their question, you don't even really need the HS code per se. You just need a product name, and through the HS tree, we call it, you will be able to find the one that best suits your need, let's say. I don't know if there's anything else. I just want to have a quick read of the question.
I think we might leave it there, because then the questions are more focused on the US. But one final question before we sign off. We have someone asking, as an exporter of kelp granule to Austria, do I pay VAT tax?
So kelp granules, right?
Yes.
So again, I would just how would I say? I would reaffirm that you would be able to search via HS code or product name. I'm assuming this user is if they're exporting to Austria, they're probably in Canada, right?
I'm assuming the same. It wasn't specific, but this is a Canada-EU webinar, so.
Exactly. So if they would be able to do the process I had done just a second ago, they could maybe search their HS code, the product name, product type, a name from Canada to Austria, they would be able to see what VAT levy they would face in Austria. On an EU level, VAT and these are not done on an EU level. That's up to the individual member state, so it varies. I had shown about Denmark earlier, it's 25, and I think in Belgium it's 23, for example. So you have different levels, so they would have to see on those.
Great, thank you very much. Well, in the interest of time, we will have to wrap it there. Thank you on behalf of myself and indeed our entire organization to our wonderful speakers from Digitrade. to Saul Goulding and his expert colleagues, Thibault, Jacob, and Laurence. It was a pleasure to have you here with us today. It's a wonderful tool. We're delighted that Canada was one of the first to be integrated. So thank you for this wonderful ongoing partnership we have in the trade relationship between EU and Canada. And we look forward to seeing all of you, our participants, at our upcoming webinars. Please follow us on our website and on social. We've got lots going on in the month of March, and we'd very much like to see you. Have a lovely day and a lovely evening for those of you who for whom night is falling. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.